Ayo, what's good, reader fam? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about death and books, and the reason why I love books that explore death. Should I be approaching this video in a fun, lighthearted way? Probably not. But I don't really want to be a Debbie Downer. Nobody ever wants to be the Debbie Downer. We all want to be the Debbie Uppers. Yeah, but if I approach this video in a sad tone, it'd be all like... Today I'm gonna be talking about something very serious. Wow, my tears went in my shirt. I'm just really emotional. The topic that I'm gonna be talking about today is death. We're all gonna die one day and that really sucks. So instead I'm gonna up the lighthearted dial so we don't all fall into an ocean of sadness. Sound good to you? Cause it sounds good to me. Today's video contains a paid promotion with Disney Book Group in celebration of their most recent release with the imprint Rick Riordan Presents. That's such a mouthful, which also, hold up, wait a minute. I have something that I wanna say to Uncle Rick, not that he'll ever watch this video, but if he ever does, hello Uncle Rick, if you're watching this, even though I know that you're not watching this, can you please just give me 1 year to get caught up on your books and your imprints books? Please, I am drowning over here, like literally drowning in books, which isn't the worst thing to be drowning in at all, but can you just give your boy 1 year to read all your books so I can breathe and not drown in the books? Pretty please? I'd really appreciate it. As if he'd stop publishing books for a year just for me. A boy can dream. Imagine being that powerful though. Can't relate, but personally probably could. Anyway, the most recent release from this imprint is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mumbolia. Every time I read this title, I just can't help but throw my fist in the air. It's just an automatic reaction. Pam, pam, pam. Boy must have a strong arm to punch a hole in the sky. Let me just say that I can absolutely not relate. I can only punch a little hole into my TBR pile. And when I mean little, I mean in the shape of a book. And then I filled that hole that I just made with another book, a new book. Because your boy has no self-control. We are getting way sidetracked here. You're probably wondering why I'm doing a death-themed video surrounding this book. Why would I want to talk about death and books when it comes to this book? Well, that's because death kind of plays a role in kicking off this story. In this book, we follow Tristan Strong, who was unable to save his friend in a bus accident, and because of this, he is sent off to Alabama to stay on his grandparents' farm in order to have some time to heal. The one thing of his friends that he managed to keep was this journal. But then one night, a freaking creature comes out of nowhere and steals the journal. What do you think you're doing, creature of the night? You're not gonna want to mess with Tristan, just look at this title. During a kerfuffle with the creature and trying to get back the journal, he ends up punching a tree, which ends up opening a chasm for the mid-pass. A place where a battle is going down, leaving two black gods, John Henry and Burr Rabbit, wanting to sleep for a year. Tristan wants nothing but to get back home. He didn't mean to open up this hole in the sky, but he's gonna have to team up with these two gods and entice the god Anansi, who is the weaver, to come out and stitch the hole that Tristan has made. Man, I feel exhausted by that description. I want to go take a nap on Tristan's behalf. This book is being pitched as Percy Jackson meets American Gods, but with a black cast. I'm pretty sure I hear you guys opening Barnes & Noble in your library and requesting this book, which that I can relate to. Now, the reason we're talking about death is, again, because death is kind of a big kicking off point for this book and all that it leads to. So today I want to talk about why I love books that talk about death. And I also want to talk about books that approach death in a unique way, but also in a very real way. So let's get started. First up, why do I love books that deal with death? Because clearly I love suffering, that's why. Capital T-E-A-T. But also mostly because it's a relatable thing. It's something that all of us deal with at some point in our lives, and a place we're all gonna unfortunately end up at. Oop, it got a little too real just then. For me and my life, losing people that I love has been the most impactful thing in my life. It's the thing that's messed with me the most emotionally and just has shifted my life in such a big way. We getting serious. Why so serious? It's something that you just really don't understand at all either until it like directly happens to you, like somebody that you love passes on. And when it happens, you're like, can this please never happen again? You see how much it affects your life and how important it is to live your life as if you're living your last days? Get that YOLO energy? Y'all thought YOLO was dead? Well, I'm bringing it back from the grave. We YOLOing in 2019, my dudes. I think because death can kind of be a difficult thing to talk about, it can be nice to turn to books and just see it be approached in books. It's nice to read books that detail feelings that you've felt before. It's just like when you're reading a book and you see other relatable topics that relate to your life, you can't help but be like, oh snap, I have felt that. Yes, I have felt that indeed. Wow, did this author just look at my life and decide to write a book? I'm feeling personally attacked right now. now, and you see yourself or a situation that you've experienced on the page. I've almost grown to love books that deal with death in a really unique way more than books that deal with death in a very real way. That's not to say that I don't love books that deal with death in a very real way, but I just feel like there's so much that you can do with it. It's a topic that can be broken down in such a way that doesn't have to be so rooted in reality, and sometimes I feel like it's even more impactful when it's done in a kind of fantastical way. I'm now going to share some examples with you of books that I feel like deal with death in a really great way. Now these are books that I've talked about a lot on my channel, so I might sound like a broken record, and that's because I am a broken record. I clearly need to be repaired, and I also need to read more books, that way I can bring more variety to my videos. I'm going to break this down into sections, so the first section that we have is the lead up to death, which that kind of means a book dealing with the anticipation of death being right around the corner. For this, I have the example of They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. In this book, you're notified as to when you're going to die. We follow Mateo, who hits it off with this boy named Rufus on his last day, and they spend their last day together. This is a really unique take on the anticipation of death, because you know what's coming, you don't really know how it's going to happen, but you know it's gonna sneak up on you and just full on attack you with feels, and that it does. Though it is kind of dope that they get to know when they're gonna die so that they can live their last day YOLO-ing. Mind you, not dope that they're dying, but at least they can live their last day doing whatever they want to do. Next we have sudden death. This is where you lose someone unexpectedly. Now this section could easily fall into the very spoilery category, but I'm going to talk about books where you go into it knowing that death was a part of it. The first one that I have here is How to Make Friends with the Dark. Now this book does have sudden death, but it also is an exploration of grief. This book is dark, like hello darkness my old friend, and it really showcases the impact that death can have on you mentally, especially when the person that dies is your everything. In this book we follow a girl whose mother passes away suddenly, and her mother was quite literally her world. And because of that, the light from her world kind of goes out, and she must figure out a way to kind of pick up the pieces again. Even if that means coming to terms with the fact that sometimes life has darkness in it and you have to become friends with it. How to Make Friends with the Dark. Honestly, this is one of the saddest books I've ever read. Ain't no happy-go-lucky contemporary story, that's for sure, but it does have like an uplifting angle to it, I would say, so at least there's that. Then we've got Phantom Limbs. Now I didn't like this book, but this video is not a recommendations video, just throwing that out there. But what I did like about this book is the death part. That sounds bad. I didn't like how the death occurred, but I liked how it was handled. That's a little better. In this book, we follow our main character Otis, and his little brother died unexpectedly, and there's a bit of a mystery involved as to how his brother actually passed away. This book kind of deals with death in a bit of a flashback manner because it happened a while back on the timeline. It also has a focus on how death can affect relationships. It has a nice mystery element to it, but it also has a frustrating element to it, so beware if you read it. But again, I can't recommend it because I didn't love this one. Oof! Next we have The Aftermath of Death, aka Grief. For this one, I picked out We Are Okay. Again, this is not a book that I can recommend, but I like how it handled the topic of grief. I feel like it approached it in a way where the characters kind of left to deal with it on their own, which is a bit of a different approach because this main character doesn't have a support system at all. While this book does deal with grief, it also has a bunch of different story threads running through it. Like loneliness is a big topic that I can remember, and relationships, I guess you could say. It's about her kind of tucking away these things that she doesn't really want to face, and then being like, crap, I gotta face all this if I want to move on in life. And I gotta show up in full-on armor for this face-off, because it could get messy. And my last category is books that approach both death and grief in a unique way, which is the most poppin' portion of this video with the most books. First up here I have Long Way Down. This book follows a guy who gets on an elevator and is on his way to get revenge on his brother's killer, and is then met with all these people from his past who have passed on. This one is unique in the way that I feel like it kind of showcases the impact that people have on your life even after they pass away. People can still influence you every day even if they're not with you physically. Next up I have The Hunger Games, which I know might be weird to have on a list like this, but I feel like this one does kind of approach death in an interesting way. This is a story about a world that holds a game called The Hunger Games where a bunch of kids are thrown into this arena and they must kill each other to survive, basically. Yeah, it's brutal. It's pretty awful. I mean, the book is good, but like the situation, not so good. To us as readers, we read this book and we're like, dang dog, that's twisted. But to the characters, this is just a normal part of their society. They've been desensitized. They've been desensitized to death, specifically in this brutal form of the Hunger Games, where children must kill off each other. But we follow a character who is thrust into this world of the Hunger Games, into the arena, and she's still strongly impacted by death. And we see how it affects her mentally and emotionally and how it affects her throughout the game as she tries to carry on and stay alive. You see how death also becomes something that drives her to keep going. And it's a really interesting look on how losing people can affect you in the long run. Obviously the circumstances are heightened in this book because of how people are dying, but hopefully you get what I mean. Next up we have A Monster Calls, one of my favorite books. Y'all knew it was coming on this list. Can't have a list like this and not share this book. It's one of my favorite books that deals with death because it does it in such a fantastical way. From the illustrations to the story alone to the history of this book and how the original author passed away before she finished it, and then she passed it on to Patrick Ness to finish off. Like, that alone gives this book just much more of a... what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever the word is for making you want to read this book, that's what it gives it. This book follows a boy who one night meets with a monster calls, if you will, and it's essentially a story of coping with death and accepting that you're losing someone close to you. It's just executed in the most magnificent and chill-inducing way. Highly recommend checking this one out if you couldn't tell. I love it, okay? And finally, the last book that I'm going to be talking about, the last book on my list, and that is The Astonishing Color of After, also a book that I talk about a little bit too much, but I'll probably never stop talking about because I love it. This is a story that both deals with grief, but also deals with being driven by a person's death. In this book, we follow a girl whose mother died by suicide, and she's convinced that her mother transformed through death into a bird. And so she decides that she's going to go on a search to track down this bird. I felt like this one just hit so many emotional notes for me that I look for in books that deal with death. It isn't necessarily the most sad book, even though it does kind of have that overarching sadness to it, but it is more so a story of acceptance with a situation that's happened like this. We follow a character who is struggling with letting go. So we follow that hardship of holding on to someone even though they've passed on, and that difficulty of coming to acceptance with a situation like that. We have reached the end. I'm done talking about morbid things today. Yay! Even though I want this conversation to continue down below in the comments. I want to know how you guys feel about books that deal with death. Do you avoid books that deal with this topic, or do you consume books that deal with this topic? And do you have any recommendations for me? What are some of your favorite books that deal with death? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. Again, thank you to Disney Book Group for sponsoring this video. Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky is in stores now, so be sure to check it out if it sounds interesting to you. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye-o!